Did Joe Rogan wipe the floor with Sanjay Contagion Gupta? People ask me all the time,
"Hey Brian, do you really use that keto elevate stuff, and does it really work?" The answer is yes and yes. Never in my entire life have I lost body fat so quickly. Not even in my prime at 25, which is over 25 years ago. I'm approaching 54 this year. If you want to support the channel and do your health a favor, grab some with my link in the description. Okay, let's talk about Joe Rogan and Sanjay Gupta. This is interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try my best to play... Oh, I think I skipped. I was going to talk about some things before that. I'm going to try my best not to say anything in this 5-minute and 38-second clip. I want you to watch this. It's going to be really hard because I'm going to want to stop this. But if you haven't seen this, even if you have, we're going to bring out some things that you might not have thought about. Check this out.
So for you, Joe Rogan.
Yes.
I would say you've had it.
Yes.
So now get one shot of the vaccine.
No.
Why not?
Because I have better immunity than I would if I was vaccinated. Right?
Yes.
Don't I?
I think your immunity is really good.
So why, if I've already gotten through COVID and I was really only sick for a day, and then 5 days later I was negative, and I do have the natural antibodies now, why would I take a chance in getting vaccinated on top of that?
By the way, I'm glad you're better. I'm glad it only lasted a day.
You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad.
No. We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you, too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing... That's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Well, the FDA put this thing out. You saw that. Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow, stop taking this stuff," or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the
Nobel Prize
in 2015?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, motherfucker. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is thick.
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine. Like, here it is. This is ivermectin.
You got
this
it with
right
you.
Here. Somebody gave it to me.
All right, hang on. The thing is, we're like going so fast. Like I feel like I'm missing.
Do you think that's a problem that your news network lies?
Well, I don't.
Dude,
what did they say?
They lied and said I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
they
with
shouldn't have said
a
it was
bunch of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication for parasitic disease, and as you say, it's probably, I think what, 250 million people have taken it around the world.
More,
I get that.
Way more.
So
way more. Billions of people have taken it.
Can I just come back to the one I want to talk about? Two things on the ledger.
You have, before we get to that, does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before.
But they did it with such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
they did. I watched.
You watched?
I watched.
You watched? No, I don't think there's
yes,
glee.
They did.
I don't. No one takes.
Joe Rogan says he has COVID, taking livestock drug despite warnings. Yeah.
Jamie had to pull this up.
You want to play it?
Does she
This is your news network.
I'm going to watch.
Let's see.
I'm going to watch.
Rogan telling his 13 million Instagram followers that he was treated with several drugs, and he included ivermectin on the list, a drug used for livestock. The FDA and the CDC warn against using to treat COVID.
Turns out I got COVID.
Look at they put a
So
yellow
we
filter on
immediately
me
threw
too.
the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds. Monoclonal
You see the original
antibodies,
video versus that? I look like shit there.
Z-Pak,
Do you know that?
I think you look good.
Pause.
It's enough.
Prednisone.
I don't
That's
think
enough, Jamie.
I don't
But-
think Aaron had glee.
Oh, well, it's more Brian Stelter was the gleeful one. But the point is, that's a lie.
It can be used for humans. I get it. I totally.
Not just could be used for humans, is often used for humans along with all the other drugs I took, all human drugs.
Yes.
They know it's a human drug,
It's right. But
and they lied.
the thing
It's defamatory.
it is. Yeah, they shouldn't have done that.
It's defamatory, right?
Well, I don't know if it's defamatory.
I bet it is.
Well, I'm not a lawyer.
It's
But-
a lie.
Well, see, here's the thing. You can have nuanced discussions about this.
No,
right?
you can't.
Yeah,
You can't have nuanced discussions about lying about someone taking horseshoe
There
wormer.
was no glee, by the way, from her. She
Well,
was.
I
I don't
didn't
think
watch her.
anyone takes people's illness.
Oh, yes, they do.
They don't want you to get
stop it.
sick, Joe.
Yes, they do.
They
were
want you to get
upset that
sick.
I got healthy. That's one thing they didn't report on. The fact that I was negative 5 days later and working out 6 days later.
Well,
6 days after infection, I was back in the gym.
I'm glad.
Felt great.
I'm glad you do. I really
Me
am.
too.
I think
Thank you.
Most of the
I'm
people
glad you're glad. You're a nice guy.
Most of the people I know, I think, would be glad that you. I don't think that there was any glee.
There's a lot of people out there that weren't glad. But my point is, you're working for a news organization. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about Syria? Do you understand that that's why people get concerned about the veracity of the news?
The concern was look, just the nuanced part of this, and you're not taking a horse dewormer. I get it. You got that as a legitimate medication from a pharmacy.
Somebody
whatever.
gave me. That's kind of a joke. My friend Megan brought.
Okay, that's it. I made it. I had to because you were saying that you guys were saying in the room that I wasn't going to make it. I made it all the way through without interrupting, and it was very, very difficult because I wanted to interrupt. First things first, let me show you this. If I can bring this up on my Camtasia. Let me see if I can bring this up on my editing software. Let's see. Let's see here. Yeah, watch this. I'm just going to show one example, I think, of what Anderson Cooper said right after Joe Rogan initially said that he got sick. Now, I understand there's another psychological operation going on here, and that's Joe Rogan saying that you know what exists. When the CDC says that it's not been isolated, the top Wuhan virologist and MSLSD said that it hasn't been isolated, and on it goes. I understand there's a psychological operation and deception going on there as well, but I want to capitalize more on what Sanjay Gupta said and what Sanjay Gupta is trying to hide. But listen to what Anderson Cooper said right after Joe Rogan said he got sick.
More breaking news this evening. Joe Rogan, an extremely popular podcaster, announced on social media today that he has COVID. Rogan has said young, healthy people don't need to get vaccinated. In his statement on social media, Rogan said he has...
And he did not, as far as I've seen, I haven't seen the whole 3-hour thing, but I don't think that he reiterated that. And I think that if that's still his position, that would have been a very important thing to reiterate.
...has taken several therapeutics to recover.
Okay, so they play this thing. Now look, Joe Rogan points out, and we're going to get back to this, that they put a yellow filter to make Joe Rogan look bad on the screen. If that's all if number one, if CNN did do that, and if that's all CNN did, then they doctored something to portray a certain image. For what reason? If you alter an image by putting a filter on it that makes the person that you're talking about look bad because you're already vilifying the ivermectin, then what does that alone say about CNN? And how could you possibly trust them with anything else? If they can't just put this raw as it appeared on Instagram, and they truly did apply a yellow filter to it to make him look worse than he otherwise would, you can't trust them. The answer is you can't trust them. Let's go on.
Ivermectin.
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more... One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses. CDC says there's no evidence it works.
And that's how they wanted to frame it. It's used often to deworm horses. Never mind that it has been and is being prescribed to many, many, many people for other reasons than parasitic situations. Listen to this right here.
Why in the world would an individual...
This is also from CNN, by the way.
...would want to take a medication for livestock?
Ivermectin can be used to treat parasites like worms and lice in humans. But
can be used, but
it's mainly used by vets to deworm livestock.
Translation, ivermectin is a horse/cow dewormer. That is being dishonest at the very, very, very best. And this is being super generous and kind. At the very best, it's dishonest because you're not giving the entire picture and you're putting more weight on it being for veterinary use. That is called a lie. And Joe Rogan makes a really, really good point. If they are lying about this, how can we trust what they say about Russia or about the economy or about the Federal Reserve or even about sporting events or anything? The answer is no logical person can. If they're going to lie about the filter on Joe Rogan's face, if they're going to lie about the thing that he took as horse dewormer and a veterinary medicine, they're frickin' liars. So the next question is, if your company is a frickin' liar, peddling misinformation, trying to vilify a certain individual, and you can't trust him for nothing, how could you possibly, as a principled person, work there? We all know the answer to that question. Sanjay Gupta wants to act like he's a real friendly guy. Sanjay Contagion Gupta from the movie that he appeared and starred in 2011 called Contagion, where they actually talk about this exact scenario that's unfolding in our real life. Look at this. Let's go to the first thing. I want to talk about the very, very first thing. And as a matter of fact, I think it is the first. Here, let me get this. Move this. The very first comment under this video right here called Joe Rogan exposes Sanjay Gupta and CNN's propaganda. And he does it in spades. And he completely just comes off the top rope and, figuratively speaking, smashes Sanjay, puts him in a pretzel, and he can't get out of it for the clips that I've seen. Sanjay, that bothered you? That lie that CNN told about you, Joe, bothered you? Joe Rogan, perfect response. It should bother you too. Hey, Sanjay, why doesn't it? Why the smirk on your face? How could you possibly continue to be involved in that company? And if they're spreading the misinformation about me, known misinformation, provable, objective lie, you don't have to guess if they lied about Joe Rogan. They did. And they didn't just do it once or twice. It wasn't just one or two people. It was, from my memory, it was Anderson Cooper, Aaron Burnett, Jake Tapper, Brian Stelter, and I'm sure there were a couple more because I stayed on this and we did videos as they came out. Every one of them. All the teleprompter reading, corporate, talking head sellouts lied. They know they lied. And it wasn't an obscure lie. It was a willful lie. They know that ivermectin is being prescribed by doctors for human beings to consume. They know it. Sanjay Gupta knows it. He was playing stupid. I don't think he's dumb. Listen to this.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you too. They're lying at your network.
Look at him. Look at him. I love that. That right there, if that's all that happened within this 3 hours, that put the target on Sanjay Gupta as not only is your company lying, you think it's funny that they lied about me. You wouldn't want that done to yourself. And you continue to work for the liars. Now, why is that, Sanjay? That paycheck must be really good, huh? And it may not just be the paycheck and the kickbacks coming from fake stream media. It may be coming from the big pharmaceutical industrial complex. What do you say? Look at that.
CNN that's glad.
No. We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing that's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Well, the FDA put this thing out. You saw that. Did you see that?
Now he's deflecting. Now he's trying to blow smoke and create a smoke screen. Hey, let's get away from this. Let's move away from this. The spotlight is a little too hot right now. Let's move away. Hey, did you see what the FDA put out? And yeah, they were kind of snarky about that. Now let's talk about the lie, the lies that multiple people, many people in CNN and the corporation itself continue to tell. How can we trust anything that they say? You can't. You can't. And so what does that make you? An unprincipled human being, Sanjay Gupta. Unprincipled. You have no moral compass. You continue to work there because you derive a paycheck. And as long as you're getting that paycheck, you're not emboldened to tell the truth. The credibility score in the eyes of the masses towards Sanjay Gupta should be through the floor right now.
Thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
So he deflects right there. Let's go to 346.
Treat COVID.
Turns out I got COVID. Look, they put a
So
yellow
we
filter on
immediately
me
threw
too.
the kitchen sink at it. All kinds
did.
of meds.
Look, Sanjay Gupta thinks that's funny. That is not funny. That's tampering with information that you're sending out to millions of people. Why would you put, if it's true, I don't know if they put a yellow filter on it. Personally, when I initially saw Joe Rogan's Instagram post where he's like he's going to throw the kitchen sink at it, his face looked ashen gray to me. He already looked bad. But if they went one more step and put a yellow filter on, I don't know if they did, but if they did, they're being dishonest with the information they're disseminating. If they're being dishonest with the information they're disseminating, then they're lying to you. And if they would lie about that, they will lie about anything. You don't have to do that. But Sanjay Gupta thinks it's funny. It's not. This should be an absolutely sobering moment in the life of Sanjay Contagion Gupta. And it's not.
Monoclonal
You see the original
antibodies,
video versus that? I look like shit there.
ivermectin,
Do you know that?
I think you look good.
Pause. It's enough.
Prednisone.
That's enough, Jamie.
I don't think Aaron had glee.
Oh well, it's more Brian Stelter was the gleeful one.
And it's not even about Glee or who the Glee came from. It's about the lie. That's the big thing, is the lie. You're covering things up. You're spreading misinformation. You're outright lying, and you're okay with it. Why are you okay with it? Let's go to 437. 437. We can't have a nuanced discussion about lying. Listen to this.
Here's the thing. You can have nuanced discussions about this.
No,
right?
you can't.
Yeah,
you can't have nuanced discussions about lying about someone taking horseshoe
There
worm.
was no glee, by the way, from her. She
Wow.
was.
I didn't watch.
See, another deflection. Talk about what he just said. You can't have a nuanced discussion about lying about somebody. You cannot have that because a lie is a lie. The truth is the truth, and never the twain shall meet. Listen to it again.
It's a lie.
Well, see, here's the thing. You can have nuanced discussions about this.
No,
right?
you can't.
Yeah,
you can't have nuanced discussions about lying about someone taking horseshoe worm.
There was no glee.
That's true. And I want to give just a little bit of interviewer credit to Joe Rogan. You don't want to hit somebody too hard because if you do, they could bolt. So he's kind of keeping it on the light side. This doesn't mean that in the back of my mind, I don't have the thought that, Joe Rogan is somehow in the pocket of the big oligarchs, or how could you have $100 million a year contract and be the most famous podcaster? I don't know. I know that he often promotes NASA. Because of NASA, the federal government pilfers our pockets to the tune of $60.1 million a day, and a bunch of various other things that he's gone back and forth on, propagating the COVID 1984 by George Orwell conspiracy that it actually exists when it's never been isolated. One of the things that I know Joe Rogan can say, and I know he has to know about this. Hey, Sanjay, why don't you just do this? Ask your Google Assistant or Siri to pull up Pfizer criminal history, and then let's have a discussion on why you, Sanjay Gupta, and why your network constantly pushes big pharma when they are known criminal history. They have a known habitual criminal history of engaging in corrupt marketing practices, bribing physicians, and suppressing adverse trial results. If Pfizer is known for that, why would you steer us in the direction of that known criminal organization? And let me just say this. Here, while we're talking about it, Who are the top shareholders of Pfizer? Well, let's just take a look at it from CNN Business. As you can see in the top corner right here, that's from CNN Business, Pfizer Incorporated. Let's look at the holdings. Who's the number 1 and number 3 holder of shares in Pfizer? Oh, look at this. It's Vanguard Group and BlackRock. Vanguard, by the way, owns most, or I think it's BlackRock owns most of Vanguard's stock. Well, why is it important that Vanguard and BlackRock are the biggest shareholders of Pfizer? Because those same two companies, Vanguard and BlackRock, are some of the biggest shareholders for Comcast, for Time Warner. Let me just give you the list. It's not even a complete list. Vanguard and BlackRock are the top 2 owners of Time Warner, who owns CNN. So the same people who own Pfizer also own CNN. Sanjay Gupta is on the payroll for CNN, who's owned by Time Warner, who's owned by Vanguard, who's owned by BlackRock, who also owns Pfizer. Does anybody see any conflict of interest here? So now you see why Sanjay Gupta is basically a master at deception and diversion and distraction in this sit down with Joe Rogan. Vanguard and BlackRock are the top 2 owners of Time Warner, Comcast, Disney, News Corp, 4 of the 6 media companies that control more than 90% of the U.S. media landscape. Not only that, they all own most of the big pharma companies, not just Pfizer. So you got to follow the money scenario here. You got to question key bono, who benefits. And then you can really, really start drilling down. Yeah, and then you got to ask, who owns BlackRock? Who owns Vanguard? How big does this thing go? How many companies do they actually own? Actually, how many banks do they actually own? Let me just give you a short list of some of the banks that they own. They own State Street, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Capital Group, 3G Capital, Wells Fargo. They even own huge amounts of shares in Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett, T. Rowe Price. And the list goes on, guys. It's endless. It's endless what BlackRock owns and Vanguard. So you got Sanjay Gupta here, and I'm not so sure who owns Spotify. Maybe they own Spotify. Maybe they own the contract to Joe Rogan, and this is all just a complete smokescreen. But I'll tell you one thing, one nugget of truth that we can get out of this is that Sanjay Gupta was definitely put on the spot and pile drove by Joe Rogan. And then Joe Rogan asked the question at 5:18, well, what about if we can't trust that they're going to tell the truth about a comedian, how are we going to be able to trust what they say about things like Russia?
Most of the people,
I'm glad you're glad. You're a nice guy.
Most of the people I know, I think, would be glad that you. I don't think that there was any.
There's a lot of people out there that weren't glad. But my point is, you're working for a news organization. If they're lying about a comedian taking horse medication, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about Syria? Do you understand that that's why people get concerned about the veracity of the news?
The concern was, look, just the nuanced part of this. And you're not taking a horse dewormer. I get it. You got that as a legitimate...
He didn't answer the question. That is a very good point. If we can't trust you about what you said about a comedian and a certain drug, ivermectin, being horse dewormer, how are we going to trust what they say about Russia? How are we going to trust it when you say that you're reporting on something that happened in politics when we already know that you're total leftists? We know that you play the left versus right paradigm lie. We can't trust anything that you say, Sanjay. You've lost all credibility on this show. And I would bring it back at the end of that 3-hour period and go, just let's recap. Let's do a 10-minute recap on everything they talked about, that we talked about here. I don't know. Maybe Joe Rogan did do this. I doubt it, because that's really putting the screws to him, man. Let's make something clear before you walk out that door. You work for a company that is known to willfully lie about this. We've caught them time and time in the past, lying about other things. You've got weapons of mass destruction, the lies that they told about 9, you know what, in September of 2001 that you can't talk about on a lot of media outlets because people get really thin-skinned and like to kick you off their platforms for it. The bottom line, Sanjay, is you have a decision to make. Are you going to stand by principle? Or Are you going to be a conformist and continue accepting your paycheck from a corporation that is knowingly misleading millions and millions of people? Or are you going to do the right thing when you walk out of this door, make a phone call to CNN and say, we got to talk and we need to do it on air, on record, recording before the entire world? But no, that's not what Sanjay did. He walked out of there and they started making fun. He wrote this little article right here, trying to make Joe Rogan look bad, trying to make it look like he was the victor, trying to make it look like, oh, he was scared to be interviewing Joe Rogan because he thought he'd come out over the desk at him and choke him. Not kidding. Sanjay Gupta said that. This is from CNN Health. This is dated October 14th. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, why Joe Rogan and I sat down and talked for more than 3 hours. Look at this. I'm going to expand this for you so you can see it because I'm not going to read the whole thing. In today's highly segmented media world, most of the people who watch and listen to me every day on CNN have already received and accepted the message about the utility of the big farm guy's product that I keep trying to shove down your throat every single chance I get. The importance of ritualistic shame muzzle wearing and how we can all work together to put an end to this planned organized partial shutdown, full shutdown of the world economy. According to James Bullard from the St. Louis Federal Reserve. Thanks, James. Thanks for spilling the beans on that. So I realized that if I was serious about trying to communicate public health, I need to go to a less comfortable place. I needed to go into the lion's den and accept an invitation to sit down with Joe Rogan for more than 3 hours. I don't think I have ever had a conversation that long with anyone. Seriously, think about that. We sat in the windowless podcast booth with two sets of headphones and microphones and a few feet between us. Not a single interruption, no cell phones, no distractions, no bathroom breaks, except for the distractions you were trying to throw up because the spotlight was getting real hot on you. Look what he says. Many friends cautioned me. He did not have to put this here. Many friends cautioned me against accepting Joe's invitation. Here's one of his friends. There is little room for reasonable conversation anymore. Yep, I agree. On CNN, on Facebook, on Twitter, in Google and YouTube. One person told me, this other person said, quote, he is a brawler and doesn't play fair. Says the friend of the guy who works for a company that was promoting weapons of mass destruction, which ended up costing trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives, and hundreds of thousands of Iraqi lives. Another warned, in fact, when I told Joe early in the podcast that I didn't agree with his apparent views on VAXX's against you-know-what, ivermectin, and many things in between, part of me thought the MMA former Taekwondo champion might hurl himself across the table and throttle my neck. Why would he think that? Maybe because he works for a corporation that may hurl itself across the table and throttle his neck if he doesn't toe the party line. If he doesn't continue propagating the agenda and acting as the public relations talking head for Big Pharma, the Big Pharma industrial complex. I wonder why he would think that. Because his own company doesn't play fair and would throttle his neck and show him give him his pink slip and show him the door. And maybe something else might happen to Sanjay. Who knows? If Sanjay came out going, you know what, guys? I've been lying to y'all. I've been lying to you a whole bunch. This is a known habitual criminal organization and still engaged in corrupt marketing practices, bribing physicians and suppressing adverse trial results. What do you think? You think, I don't know, maybe you'd get Clinton sided or Arkin sided. There's more in here that's not shocking that he would say that. And then he appeared on his own broadcast so that they can make a little bit of fun of Joe, even though he got his ass handed to him, in my opinion, by Joe Rogan. They feel so comfortable being away from Joe Rogan because while they're sitting in front of their cameras, reading their teleprompters, doing what their corporate media oligarch overlords tell them, they feel real comfortable because nobody's going to question them. And you know what? Speaking of that, let me read you. Look at this. Look at some of these comments under this Joe Rogan Sanjay Gupta video. Some people just hit the nail on the head. This is when Sanjay started considering listening to his friends who told him he shouldn't go on the podcast, what we just read from that CNN article that Sanjay Gupta wrote. Notice how he tries really hard to avoid saying anything even close to the tune of CNN being in the wrong. Notice how he tries to brush it off with a nervous smile as if he doesn't know that they're doing wrong. Very, very well said. They are playing stupid. This is a very important episode, and I do appreciate him having the balls to come on, but I can't say he's a nice guy when we know that they know. And we know that they know, and we know Sanjay Gupta knows. This guy says the guy's attitude is precisely why we cannot trust mainstream media. Joe nailed him with facts, and the guy's response is essentially, whatever, dude, it's nuanced. A medical doctor. He would not own it because he's bought and paid for. I didn't say it. Joe knows this. That's why he can't press him too hard. The guy can simply walk out if Joe gets too aggressive, and I'm sure Joe wants to keep him in there as long as possible. Let him continue exposing their agenda with his smirky responses. The look of regret on Sanjay's face, I made a mistake by coming here, priceless. This is what having no dignity looks like. A frickin' man. Sanjay clearly knows and admits that his network outright lied about Joe and knows that Joe is right, but continues to defend him because of ideology and or a paycheck. Yep. Absolutely. Look at this.
Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, sat down for a 3-hour one-on-one with controversial podcast host Joe Rogan last night.
Before we go on with this, if you guys can, do me a favor and share this video with everybody you know. I want this video to go viral because I want to get Joe Rogan's attention. Hey, Joe, if you're watching this video right here, and I don't know why you'd be watching me, but if you are, all you have to do, Joe, is Google Pfizer criminal history. All you have to do is look at a couple of my videos or Andrew Kaufman's videos or Tom Cowan's videos, and I implore you, have Andrew Kaufman, Tom Cowan, Anthony Fauci, and Sanjay Gupta on for a roundtable discussion, and let's see where that goes. Joe, CDC actually says that they did not have an isolated virus at the time of bringing online the RT-PCR diagnostic test. The guy in Wuhan from an NBC episode said the problem is we haven't isolated the virus. If it is not isolated and the tests are 100% inaccurate, according to the maker of the test, Carrie Mullis, who said that basically Anthony Fauci is a charlatan, then we got a serious problem. Because not only hasn't the COVID 1984 by George Orwell not been isolated, the tests, which are hailed by the likes of the Johns Hopkins University Fear Porn Death Map Boys and Girls, the World Health Organization, Klaus Schwab, the Great Reset, Reset the Table, Lockstep. Google says that it's a known criminal organization engaged in corrupt marketing practices, bribing physicians. This is Pfizer. A corrupt, habitual organization engaged in criminal marketing actions, bribing physicians, and suppressing adverse trial results. That's all you have to know about follow the money, key bono, who benefits. Get this to Joe Rogan. Maybe he can have Andrew Kaufman and Tom Cowan on there to debate against Sanjay Gupta and Anthony Fauci, who, by the way, lied under oath. And I think even Joe Rogan touched on this. Anthony Fauci lied under oath. CNN lied about Joe Rogan. And the thing that Anthony Fauci lied about was the gain of function in front of Rand Paul. We already know what the score was on that, but he lied anyway. He didn't even have to lie about that. Everybody knows what the truth is on that. Trying to make, diseases more pathogenic. For what reason? Well, I don't know. I don't know why they would do that. I don't know why the military-industrial complex would have their hands in that. I don't know why that would be budgeted. I don't know why the American tax cattle would be pilfered for that, to fund something like that. And I don't know why the top-paid federal employee, Anthony Fauci, $416,000 a year, thank you very much, even higher than the president and the vice president, why he would lie before Congress about that. I don't know why you would do that. Why do people lie? To obscure the truth. What's the truth? Well, it may not be about care for the people. Maybe it's about control over the people. I don't know. So get this to Joe Rogan. Let's go on.
Rogan remains a vaccine skeptic despite having caught COVID-19 himself. Let's listen to part of this.
So would you now, with what you know now, and having had COVID, would you have wished that you had been vaccinated beforehand?
But I got.
You almost got vaccinated.
Yeah, but I explained all that.
You got through it.
But I got through COVID.
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that was my thought was, I'm a healthy person. I exercise constantly. I'm always taking vitamins. I take care of myself. I felt like I was going to be okay, and that was true. It was correct. I'm happy. I got through it. I don't wish it upon anyone. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't the worst cold I've ever had, and I got over it fairly quickly, relatively speaking.
I think that, and again, I am truly glad about that. I'm not, all kidding aside, I don't think anybody wishes you, everyone wants you to be well and healthy.
I don't even believe one word that comes out of this guy's mouth.
But I think the question is just in terms of the nuance of this. It's not a strategy to recommend people get infected.
I'm not recommending anybody get infected.
So they should get vaccinated.
I think a lot of people should get vaccinated.
Keep in mind what Joe Rogan said there. I don't recommend that anybody get infected.
You're talking,
I think
you're talking a lot of vulnerable people.
Yeah.
If you just said vulnerable people, there'd be a lot
older
of people.
Fat people, I think a lot of those folks. My real concern is this urge to vaccinate children. And I don't know what kind of data we have on the long-term effects of this.
Okay, before CNN goes back there, let me show you this other thing on this article from Sanjay Gupta. And this is something that I knew a year and a half ago. Joe Rogan would not let anybody in his studio unless they got tested. Let me show you something right here. If this is true, where is it? I read this at the end of this article right here. Look, it bears repeating that no one should choose infection over vaccination. First of all, you have to prove that the virus actually exists in the first place. Second of all, you have to prove contagion. When the Boston experiment and the San Francisco experiment back in 1918 discovered that they couldn't even went out of their way to try to get people infected, and they couldn't do it. That's the concern many public health officials have had since the early days of the planned organized partial shutdown of the U.S. economy in the second quarter. If nothing else comes out of my conversation with Joe, I hope at least this one does. But right somewhere it says that Sanjay Gupta had to be he had to be tested before he could enter Joe Rogan's studio. Let me see here. Let's see. So back and forth, for example. Oh, yeah, here we go. Despite a downplaying of COVID risks often heard on Joe's podcast, his private studio prioritizes safety. A nurse was present to perform a rapid COVID test before we began. We were even checked for the presence of antibodies with a finger prick blood test. And then he says, both of us carried antibodies, his from natural immunity, mine from the VAXX. I was vaccinated in December of last year, and Rogan contracted COVID at the end of August. Even though his antibody test could only detect the presence of antibodies and not their strength, Joe took great pride in his test, insisting the thickness of his lines must mean stronger immunity. I'm fairly certain he was joking, and I don't even have the heart to tell him that my antibody line was significantly thicker than his anyway. Later on, he actually talks about how bogus all these tests actually are. So it didn't even matter if they got tested. Even in Sanjay Gupta's mind, he's like, it's bogus. But who profits from the giving of those tests right there? The big farm guy. The big farm guy profits from every test given, whether it's antibody or PCR. They benefit from every single VAXX given, every single booster that will ever be given. They and their shareholders profit from that. And if you can get government on board making mandates to where you have to take a test, or you have to take a booster, or you have to take the VAXX, who's profiting from that? Key bono, who benefits? It's all crazy. So you got Joe Rogan actually bowing down to the existence of this thing, propagating the lie while he rightly calls Sanjay Gupta out. Just a bunch of nonsense. It's just a bunch of nonsense. So what I'll do is I'll leave here. Let me just give you this link right here. You can watch the rest of it. I'm not going to go over the rest of this, but the long and the short of it is these three right here basically make fun of Joe Rogan, shaking their head. Sanjay, how did you do it? How did you even go in the lion's den and sit there for 3 hours getting bombarded by ignorance? How did you ever do it? This is the Counterfeit News Network, guys. And no mention, there was no mention, as you can imagine, of CNN lying about Joe Rogan and ivermectin. No mention, of course, at all. Hey guys, we know with the way things have been going, it can get really interesting really quick. So make sure you and your family have a long-term storable food supply. Support the channel and get $50 off with my link in the description while you still can.